Actually, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, we revisit our top story, the ongoing conflict in Syria, which has gone 2 years now, 100,000 lives, and more recently 300 dying of chemical weapons. We talked to Naeem Jeenah, who's the Executive Director of the Afro-Middle East Centre in Johannesburg. Thank you very much for joining us. So, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says that we've reached a critical moment in the Syrian conflict. Do you agree with that?
I think it certainly is a critical moment, especially if the United States, Britain and France decide to actually launch an attack on Syria. It could be a momentous moment.
All right, so the UN Security Council is meeting right now. Given the divisions inside the P5, what is likely to come out of this meeting?
Concern that chemical weapons were used and a call for an investigation. I mean, that's about as much as we will get out of it. I think the British were also a bit too, more than ambitious, I think a bit arrogant to think that they would get a resolution passed that would grant them to do whatever is necessary, etc. So nothing's going to come out really of the Security Council. If Britain, the US and France decide to act, they'll be doing it on their own.
So, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says that the inspectors must be given time to finish their investigation. Will we know, do you think, A, definitely where the chemical weapons were used, and B, who might have deployed them?
Well, on the first question, I mean, frankly, their work is going to be somewhat redundant because everyone now agrees that chemical weapons were used. Whether it's the US or Russia or Iran, the regime, the opposition, everyone agrees that chemical weapons were used. And that's about all that the inspectors would be able to tell us. They're not going to be able to tell us who deployed those chemical weapons, which is really the critical issue right now, and the issue on which the whole American rhetoric around attacking Syria hinges.
And if that question isn't answered, what then?
The problem is that these three powers in particular, US, Britain and France, have decided that they know that it was the regime that was responsible. And so they're not really waiting for anything from the inspectors. In fact, there's some thought that the inspectors might be told to pull out in the next couple of days if they're going to be bombing. So they're not really interested in waiting for a report from them. They're going to go ahead with whatever their plans are.
Russia says that military action in Syria would destabilize the region. Do you agree with that?
It has the potential to do that, certainly. And let's understand that there's not going to be an invasion. This is not going to be like Iraq. At most, what you'll get is British and American warships firing cruise missiles onto selected targets in Syria. It may last for an hour or a couple of hours, and it really won't make too much of a difference to the conflict within Syria itself. However, it could have repercussions in the region, particularly, for example, if Israel is involved in any kind of way. If it goes longer than just a few strikes, etc., you could see this. Already you have a spillover into Lebanon, you have a spillover into Iraq, possibly you could get a spillover into Jordan, into Turkey, etc., and it could ignite the whole region.
What would Syria's retaliation be if these strikes happen?
There's a few options. The one option is that they'll do what they did when the Israelis bombed earlier this year, which is nothing. Loud noises, but nothing more than that. If the strike is just a very brief cruise missile strike, then there's a chance that that's what they'll do. They'll say they're going to take it to the UN, etc., but not do anything practically. If it goes more than that, the other option is that they then decide that the US has declared war, and therefore begin targeting not just Syria but Iran and others, begin targeting US interests as well. I think that's a remote possibility. I don't think that certainly not Russia, not Iran wants to see this develop into a global kind of war.
All right, so we're going to have to leave it there. Naeem Jeenah, Executive Director, Afro-Middle East Centre in Johannesburg. Thank you for your time.